this is one that I have had in mind from when we first started our channel, and that is Star Wars. Yeah. So first movie I ever saw in the theater, 3 years old. The year is 1977. I hope that's right. And I have no memory of it whatsoever, but it must have stuck with me because it was one of my favorite movies, the original New Hope, for years and years and years. And I remember as a teenager and then a young adult pining for them to make new movies. Mm-hmm. And then they re-released the original trilogy. And I was like, okay, so they add some footage, some cheap CGI, and right. I'm not impressed. Then the prequel trilogy. So, yeah, not a huge fan, though I get it was for the kids. And then the sequel trilogy. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about the sequel trilogy. But before we proceed, favorite Star Wars movie, go.
Oh, boy. You're going to hate me for this, but it's Phantom Menace.
Maybe. Okay. How old were you when it came out?
Well, that's why, because I was probably 10 years old, I think, when it came out. So, or 9 or 10. So it was everything that I knew, but also doesn't mean it's a good movie. It's just my favorite. Because I love
it just means you haven't matured.
I love, like, right, I haven't matured, right. But it also, like, you know, like, it's like, it is my favorite, though, because of just the characters. Like, everybody hated Jar Jar Binks. Like, I actually had a Jar Jar Binks action figure. Like, it was just the timing is why. And it's still my favorite to this day because it brings me back to that time. You know what I mean?
During your formative years, and you were young, and well, your movie tastes were simple. Maybe, you know, your tastes in character. Anyway, so all right, but that's fine. So, and really, no judgment here. If you had said The Last Jedi, well, it would have been the perfect segue for our video today, which is it's a part one in a series. I don't know how many we'll do, but this is part one. It's a battle for Star Wars. And there have been there's so much content. So much of YouTube is taken up with Star Wars and really either ripping or defending or explaining or whatever. We're going to take a look at the shift in the worldview, or the shift in the big story behind the Star Wars universe that happened. It happened a little bit gradually, and then boom, all of a sudden with The Last Jedi is like, oof, it like rushed upon us like a herd of cattle and stampeded us as they retconned duality. They reinterpreted the duality between good and evil, between the light side and the dark side of the Force, and they completely reimagined what the Force is and what it's trying to accomplish. I mean, it's supposed to be a mindless force, and yet, so that's where we're going to take a look today, is the story behind Star Wars. And, I remember as a child, the reason I loved Star Wars so much was there was this narrative that starts out with this little farm boy and, the really annoying quote, I was going into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, right? Lucas is this teenage kid. His favorite movie is probably Phantom Menace at this point in his life. And then fast forward, he is now at the end of the third movie, and he's, lightsaber battling with Darth Vader, and then the Emperor, he escalates with the Force lightning, and it's like, oh my gosh, where is this going, right? And then finally, boom, the second Death Star explodes, and the crowd cheers. The crowd goes wild because good defeated evil. The good guys won. And that was how the duality was expressed, right? It was good versus evil, and we're all rooting for good. We're rooting against evil. And so I've coined this term retconning duality because in the sequel trilogy, it's a very different version of this duality between good and bad, and good being the good and bad being bad. And now it's no longer good is good and bad is bad. It's now good and bad in balance is good, and out of balance is bad. And this, of course, is what we're going to talk about today. And the story, the shift in the story, and how that reflects us in our culture and how we've changed in so many ways. And so, so here we go. Let's talk original trilogy. Let's talk specifically about the line, Yoda says, that balance in the Force is a good thing. What did you, watching the original trilogy, what did you imagine Yoda meant? That, whether they thought it was Anakin, but it turns out it was Luke, was supposed to bring balance to the Force. What did you imagine that meant? I mean, I'll tell you what I imagined, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, balance in, like, for me, the meaning right away was more like the will of what's supposed to be, like things that sort of like the greater plan. Not a balance of like, well, there was good here, so there has to be evil on this side because then it's got to do this. That was more just like, there's a grand plan,
Grand
that's what
plan.
I thought, at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Luke here is training, and Yoda's telling him he needs to bring balance to the Force, but and there is this grand plan. There's a prophecy and all this, right?
Right.
But what do you imagine? Like, looking back, you know how the story ends.
Right.
Did you think that when the Emperor died, that an evil was vanquished and the Emperor was overthrown and the good guys won? Did you think like, there's a little too much good now, not enough
that's
evil?
The balance it should be. Back to original intent, if you will, just sort of where things are good, where things are even level, like when something is extinguished that is leeching on like a bigger, this is how it's supposed to be, and that's the perfect balance. So more like where it was supposed to be, kind of like Eden, Garden of Eden style, like back to balance.
Yes, where little Ewoks can go to school without fear being shot by stormtroopers.
I'm not. Yes. I'm not smiling, but yes, that's a good. That's a good analogy. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what I have to think about. For these episodes.
No, I understand. Yeah, no, it's very relevant.
In other words, we cheered like the whole what did they reissued the original? They even added fireworks at the end of the final Return of the Jedi, where everybody on all the planets, everyone is, it was terrible, but they're all celebrating because good has been vanquished. Now, fast forward, and Luke himself, the hero of the rebellion, the guy who blew up the first Death Star and killed the Emperor, well, with Darth Vader's help, and rescued his father, redeems him from the dark side, right? He does all these amazing things. He's the hero. On his own lips, he says the Jedi Order needed to die because in their pursuit of good led them to hubris, led them to pride. In other words, they saw themselves as the champions of good, the defenders of order and right and morality and all of that, but they became prideful. And so what needed to happen was good and bad needed to be in balance. There needs to be equal measure on both sides. Luke himself says this. Luke gets retconned, for one, right? Drinking his, green walrus milk.
Yeah,
And so Luke gets retconned, but also Luke's morality, his moral compass gets retconned. And then there's this dyad that's explicit in the third movie between Kylo Ren, and it's hinted in the second and explicit in the third, that you need them both. Neither one can exist with its yin and yang. Kylo and Rey, they have to exist together as one. And I remember watching the second movie in that sequel trilogy and just going, what? Balance?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, great. You know what I mean? Like, I think I audibly heard from even people sitting next to me in the theater, like, because now we're going to get a lecture, and now we're sitting in the theater because now Star Wars has become yet again another force, if you will, to give us information that is just more of the writer's feelings and opinions. So now we have to destroy a franchise, that's usually what happens, right? You have to go straight for the good stuff and then just tear it down.
Well, and
because there's not allowed to be cut and dry. That's not allowed. I think that's the bigger
Right.
problem.
There is no.
Is that
Did you ever hear
like
the song?
when you what's that say again?
There's a song. It's 50 years old. It came out the same year as Star Wars by a guy named, I think his last name is Mason. And he sings, "There ain't no good guys. There ain't no bad guys. There's only you and me, and we just disagree." Yeah. Anyway, that wasn't really good singing, but
No, that's fine. No, I appreciate the merit. But I will say in response though that yes, there's a fear of coming to there is good and there is evil. And that was apparent in this last Star Wars. And I think it's because, look, you have people that are in control of these franchises now that more are not trying to tell a story. They're trying to tell you something that will make you buy their products and buy their merchandise, and also, try to identify with as many people as possible, because like at the core of it, stories like alienate people, because there's always going to be, to me, a story will always alienate someone. There will be someone there that will feel like, wow, I can't identify with that. That movie didn't, like, I didn't think it was that great because I didn't understand this or understand that. That's always going to happen. But you're taking away the chance, you're taking away the vulnerability of telling a story. You're taking all that away when you start saying, well, shoot, we can't have the good guys like win because they're good. Cause like, what is good, and like, we
that's
can't
it. How do
really
I
say
know what good is?
Cause like, these other people might think that like, electrocuting people and like falling to their death and their innocence, like that could be good to them. So yeah.
How do you know
what I mean?
the Emperor wasn't just he was one breath away from being a decent fellow, right? I mean, look at Darth Vader, right? He turns. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So and I think the seeds were planted in the, kind of the myth of the Force, right? And that it is it's sort of working impersonally for balance between good and evil. But make no mistake, the original trilogy was rooted firmly in a worldview that says good is good and bad is bad. Evil is bad. And we want more good and we want less evil, and therefore good should beat evil, and then we'll all be happy. That was the story that we heard. And that got retconned. It got whitewashed. It got turned into this fuzzy gray of
and also to say, like, movies in general, in America have, like, for the longest time always had the same act 1, act 2, act 3, hero's journey, right? I didn't see, when I saw this gray force area happening, I didn't see them being clever or them being like, oh, let's take the norm and kind of like move it a bit. Because like you can create anti-heroes, you can create really cool things like that if you're actually being creative. This to me felt more like let's just make sure everybody feels comfortable with this. And meanwhile, they got a sigh from most people, I would say, when that happened.
Yeah, so the opinions are very divided. But let's point out that this retconning of duality has really kind of flowered, especially here in the retelling of a lot of the Disney villain stories. So you've no doubt heard of the Broadway musical Wicked. Yes. Right. And so this is a retelling. So they were very clear. We're not retconning Frank Baum's classic tale, The Wizard of Oz. We're reimagining. Well, what if she had just been this misunderstood Elphaba, who's the green-skinned Wicked Witch of the West, but she's not really wicked. She's just misunderstood and vilified, and
which I can
ultimately
appreciate that viewpoint a little bit. Like I can see, like,
I'm okay
creative.
Telling those stories.
Right.
I'm okay
it's like,
telling those stories.
Like seeing Smeagol's story, for example, in Lord of the Rings. Like it's actually a heartbreaking story. It's a heartbreaking story.
Right up until he murders his brother.
Right.
Right up until he murders his brother.
This is not heartbreaking. This is weird. And Andy Serkis making like constipation faces. Yeah, that's a little more disturbing.
So why do we imagine that this shift in storytelling has taken place where there are fewer and fewer movies with clear good guys, clear bad guys? Is it because we're morally more mature than we used to be, and this was a simplistic kind of Dark Ages view, medieval view of good and evil. That really there need to be more gray areas. I mean, you mentioned Smeagol into Gollum over here. We could just as easily take Han Solo, who's the pirate smuggler guy who is
right.
A rogue and a scoundrel, but he gets so he's morally gray at first, but then of course he becomes one of the good guys. But it seems that more and more and more movies are not wanting to have a clear light and dark, good guy, bad guy, but more are wanting to try to thread the needle and say, let's not be too hasty here to judge. Let's not say who's good or who's bad. Let's just let everybody kind of like live their truth. We've heard that saying, right? Live your truth. Why do I think that's happening? What is it? What is going on in our culture? Are we becoming more mature, or are we actually losing something that really is vital to us as human beings? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sign of weakness, a little bit in our ability to stand on things that we know are truths, because we live in a world where we have access to 3 billion opinions by looking at our pocket. Everything is like up for interpretation, everything, to the point of where now it's like, I just feel like people are so afraid to actually say stuff that they know, like in their own, I would even say just in their own moral compass that's kind of built into us. Like they're afraid to even just think those, because it's like you can think so far into these things to deconstruct them to the point of where there's almost nothing left. So I don't think that's, there are points in history where things were deconstructed in order for change to happen, progressive movements forward. But this almost feels like a reset backward. This isn't a movement forward. This is actually pushing us backward to where now we're like, what are we, cavemen again? And we have to look on the wall and start writing random pictures to find out what's good and bad. Like, no, we know what's good and bad. We've had thousands of years to experience that. And then there's another sort of, I think, agenda happening in this too, where Hollywood kind of wants to challenge good and evil, because they feel like they have enough experience in the real world, which most of them don't, but they have enough experience in the real world to start challenging good and evil and say, well, you thought that that's that, but I say this. It's like, it's kind of annoying. I will say though that I do think it's fun to kind of mess with, the norms, because that's what movie making can be. It can be a medium to visually kind of mess with, or like the story we all know, you mess with it. And that's why it brings, sometimes some really good, like, wow, that was really cool. Just in the same way in music, when you mess with the key or something like that, or you like throw something in there that does not belong, but you bring it somewhere else, you're like, whoa, that was really cool. I think that movies have the ability to do that. But like you said, there's this shift that almost feels like, well, this is the way we think about it now.
You're talking about, when you say defying expectations, is you're saying, hey, as long as we can agree on what the rules are, when you violate the rules, that could be interesting, right? The rules of movie making, the rules of storytelling.
Exactly.
But what we're seeing increasingly is, let's just throw out the rules. So going from let's say a postmodern deconstruction and reconstruction, but still agreeing basically that good is good and bad is bad, to a more of a nihilistic worldview where we don't even like the terms good and bad, so we're just going to say balance instead. And that way we don't have to take a position on which one of these is good and which one of these is bad. And in the meantime, Kylo Ren has managed to murder both his father and his mother. But he needs to be in the balance.
Right. That one's bad. Yeah. It's all bad. Yeah.
We need a balance of George Lucas's and Kathleen Kennedy's in the world. Otherwise, if you have too many George Lucas's and Steven Spielberg's, the universe will get out of balance and we'll have too many good movies. But we don't want good movies.
You're going to have too many GFX walking through your life added later. If there's too many George Lucases in your life.
Well, there may be
you're going to see like, what the heck was that animal just walking through? Yeah, and that too. Yeah.
So here's the question for our audience, and really we're inviting you to, I mean, we do want you to like, we do want you to subscribe. We do want you to check out more of the stories we live by as we release episodes. But what I'm curious to know is, Will and audience, do you want more of a balance of good people and evil people in your life? Or do you want more good people in your life and fewer evil people? Because at the end of the day, right, life doesn't work by balance. We don't pursue balance. We pursue good. And this is hardwired into us to pursue good. So you're absolutely right. Like, write a universe where everything is balanced and see if it sells movies. If you retcon the duality of a cherished franchise, in fact, one of the most popular franchises in movie history, expect some pushback, expect some people to not be haters on your movie, but to say, hey, you just took what was really kind of cool and fulfilling about this movie, and you turned it into a gray fuzzy blob of frustration for me. So, yeah. So at any rate, we're going to do more Star Wars later, but for now, we just kind of wanted to give you a taste. Yeah. So I hope to see you in our next video.
See ya.